When the racist landlord evicted Marion Walker and her children, he had no idea that his hold over them was about to crumble. Her next move would shock even the most jaded observers. But let's start from the very beginning. Marion Walker, a 38-year-old black woman, was struggling to balance her demanding job with raising her two sons, Elijah and Caleb. Their modest but cozy apartment was their only safe haven. One morning, when she opened the door, she found an envelope with the words, "Eviction Notice," printed on it. "What is this?" she muttered, feeling the blood drain from her face. She quickly scanned the letter. "Violation of community rules. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." It was a shock. There had never been any complaints about her or her family. Later that day, she confronted the building's landlord, Charles Harper, a 60-year-old white man notorious for his cold, ruthless demeanor. His office, furnished with expensive furniture, emphasized the stark contrast between their lives. "This must be a mistake," Marion said firmly, clutching the notice in her hand. "We've broken no rules." Harper barely looked up from his glasses as he replied lazily, "It's no mistake, Miss Walker. I've made my decision. People like you don't belong in this neighborhood." Her eyes burned with anger. "You're evicting us because of the color of our skin? That's illegal." "You're welcome to file a complaint," Harper smirked. "Good luck finding a lawyer you can afford." Marion returned home, overwhelmed by despair. Her neighbors, many of whom were also black, offered their support. One of them, Jacob, an activist and longtime friend, had a plan. "We can't let him get away with this," he said. "We need to shine a light on this injustice." That evening, Jacob helped Marion record a video in which she shared her story. She spoke about the unfair treatment, the prejudice, and the threat of losing the only home her family had. "I won't back down," she said, staring directly into the camera. "This isn't just my fight. It's a fight for justice for all of us." The video began to spread quickly, gaining thousands of views by the next day. But Marion knew this was only the beginning. She was ready to fight for her right to stay in her home. Marion's video quickly went viral. Under the hashtag #JusticeForWalker, hundreds of people shared her story, condemning racism and injustice. Support poured in through comments like, "We stand with you," and "This is unacceptable." However, alongside the support came threats directed at Charles Harper. Journalists began knocking on his door, and his name and photo spread across news headlines. Charles, a man accustomed to being in control, was seething with anger. In an interview with local news, he tried to defend himself. "This has nothing to do with race. There were complaints, and I'm just doing my job." Meanwhile, activists gathered outside Marion's building. Jacob organized a protest. Dozens of people held signs reading, "No to discrimination," and "Justice for the Walkers." Journalists covered the demonstration, adding fuel to the fire. Marion watched from her window, her heart torn by emotions. On one hand, she felt the warmth of support, but on the other, fear gripped her. She knew this level of attention could backfire. And it did. Charles hired lawyers and filed a lawsuit against her for defamation and inciting unrest. "He's trying to corner us," Jacob said. "But he didn't anticipate people rallying around you. We need to keep pushing." Suddenly there was a knock at Marion's door. A reporter from a major news network stood there, offering her an interview on live television. Realizing this was her chance to tell the world her truth, Marion agreed. The next day, she sat in the studio. "I'm not asking for anything extraordinary," she said, looking directly into the camera. "I just want my children to feel safe in their home. This isn't about money. It's about dignity." After the broadcast, support doubled. Donations began flooding in, with people offering to cover her legal fees and help her secure housing. Seeing that the attention on the case wasn't fading, Harper began to lose his grip. He received a barrage of calls from tenants, who now demanded justice for everyone in the building. Public pressure mounted. Charles slowly realized that his usual tactics no longer worked. After weeks of relentless fighting, Marion felt her strength waning. But just as she was nearing her breaking point, something unexpected happened. She received a letter from the attorney of her late husband, Jerome. The letter revealed something she had never known. Jerome had left behind significant savings in stocks. Marion met with the attorney. "Your husband wanted these funds to be the foundation of your security," he explained. "Right now, they're enough to cover the cost of this entire building." Her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe it, but suddenly she had a real chance. Not just to reclaim her home, but to transform everything for the other tenants as well. "I'm buying it," she said without hesitation. 2 weeks later, the deal was finalized. Harper, confident that he'd washed his hands of the problem, had no idea who the new owner was. Marion decided to wait for the right moment to deliver the news herself. The next morning, Harper arrived at what he believed was still his office. He was surprised to find an attorney waiting for him with a set of keys. "Welcome, Mr. Harper," a familiar voice called out. Standing in the doorway was Marion, her confidence radiating. "This building belongs to me now." "This is some kind of joke," he yelled, his face flushing red. "You? This is impossible." "Quite possible, Mr. Harper," she replied with a calm smile. "My neighbors and I will no longer live in fear. From now on, the rules will be fair for everyone." Harper's mind raced as he realized he had lost everything. Desperately, he tried to regain control. "I'll sue you. You'll never manage this place successfully." But Marion was prepared. "Good luck with that, Mr. Harper. Unlike you, I lead with respect, not fear." With that, Harper left the building, defeated for the first time in his life. Marion, on the other hand, felt her heart fill with hope for the first time in a long while. She knew there was still much work ahead, but she also knew she wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, Marion woke up earlier than usual. She had spent the night drafting a list of priorities to improve the building. Her first step was to invite all the tenants to a community meeting. The previously abandoned basement hall now buzzed with life as more than half of the tenants arrived, some with children in their arms, others with skepticism in their eyes. Marion opened the meeting with confidence. "This building no longer belongs to the man who intimidated you. It belongs to us now. I'm here to make this place comfortable for everyone, but I need your support." The tenants exchanged glances, stunned by her words. A middle-aged man raised his hand. "Excuse me, but where's this confidence coming from? Are you sure you can do this?" Marion smiled warmly. "I don't have a choice. I know what it's like to live in fear of losing your home. Now, I want to make sure none of you ever feel unsafe here again." She announced plans to review all rental agreements. The inflated prices Harper had imposed to drive out undesirable tenants would be reduced. Additionally, part of the rent proceeds would be allocated to much-needed building repairs. Meanwhile, Harper, furious upon learning about the meeting, attempted to regain control. He hired lawyers and filed a lawsuit against Marion, accusing her of owner discrimination and defamation. But this move proved disastrous. Former tenants began stepping forward to testify about his discriminatory practices. One by one, they shared accounts of rent hikes, water shutoffs, and baseless evictions. These testimonies provided evidence that not only helped Marion win the case, but also completely destroyed Harper's already tarnished reputation. While the legal battle unfolded, Marion pressed forward with building improvements. She signed a contract with a local construction company that supported her mission. The renovations began with urgent issues, replacing the roof, fixing the elevators, and cleaning the common areas. But Marion didn't stop there. She rallied her neighbors and local volunteers to help create a small playground for children in the building's backyard. "This is for our children so they can feel at home," she said, helping a group of volunteers install swings. Before long, Marion's story gained national attention. Television reports highlighted the transformed building and the grateful tenants whose lives she had changed. Social media hashtags like #Justice for Walker and #Housing. Equality continued to trend, with donations pouring in to fund further improvements. One day, journalists knocked on her door. "You've become a symbol of the fight for justice. Why didn't you give up, despite everything you faced?" She paused for a moment before answering. "I couldn't let my children grow up in fear. I couldn't allow other families to suffer the way we did. This isn't just a building. This is our home, and I'll do everything I can to protect it." Meanwhile, Harper sat in his new rental, a small, dim motel room on the outskirts of the city. For the first time, regret was visible on his face as he watched the news reports about Marion's success. He was finally forced to reflect on how his greed and hatred had led to his downfall. A few months later, the Walker Building became home to a tenant support community. People shared advice, helped each other, and, most importantly, felt like part of one big family. Standing by the window of her renovated apartment, Marion looked out at the vibrant sunset. Her children played on the new playground, laughing with other kids. She smiled, a deep sense of peace and confidence washing over her. The fight for justice had been grueling, but she knew this was only the beginning. Now she wasn't just living. She was inspiring others to fight for their rights.